Okay, good evening. We're ready to start our KernCOG public workshop tonight. Kevin Wood from Clean Transportation Specialist Center for Sustainable Energy.
Great. Thank you, members of the board, for the opportunity to present and share this information with you tonight. As I was introduced, my name is Kevin Wood, a technical specialist with the Center for Sustainable Energy. We're an independent nonprofit, and we're working with the San Joaquin Valley Unified Air District to provide this resources and information to help make sure the valley is ready for the coming influx of electric vehicles. So this project called Valley Takes Charge, which I think a copy of this presentation and maybe a fact sheet was included in your packet, has the goal of empowering the San Joaquin Valley to adopt more electric vehicles by offering resources on permitting and inspection for your city staff. We're also doing training and information for installers. Those are electricians and other contractors that can install electric vehicle charging stations, as well as offering more awareness for decision makers like yourself on electric vehicles and their advantages and benefits. And all this is geared towards a variety of local and state goals, the most notable of which is the state goal to get 1.5 million plug-in electric vehicles by 2025, which means about 150,000 electric vehicles in the valley over the next 8 years. So why are we talking about electric vehicles? Along with these state policies, there's also market trends that are expected to dramatically increase the number of electric vehicles in the valley. There's also a law that was signed by Governor Brown in 2015 called AB 1236 that is requiring local communities to take action on electric vehicles. But Valley Takes Charge, this program we're running, has resources to help the jurisdictions comply with that law. So an electric vehicle policy, where do we need to go? I mentioned 1.5 million zero emission vehicles, actually, which does include a small number of fuel cell vehicles. But the bulk of the vehicles that are expected, as you can see on this chart, or hopefully you can see, is battery electric and plug-in hybrid vehicles. And the numbers are expected to dramatically increase moving out to 2025. And if we look at the longer term state goals, which are shown in the chart on the right, to meet the state's air quality goals, including the valley's air quality goals, the fleet of vehicles on the road will undergo a dramatic change over the next 30 years to be primarily electric or other zero emission vehicles. So those are some challenging numbers and lofty goals, but luckily the market seems to be keeping up now with more choices in electric vehicles. There's more than 30 widely available models today, including more types of vehicles, such as a plug-in hybrid minivan and some SUVs. And there's also a growing number of hydrogen fuel cell electric vehicles are starting to become available as well. And as part of the state's goals to get these vehicles on the road, there's some substantial monetary incentives. There's a federal tax credit for the vehicles, and then the state Clean Vehicle Rebate Project offers $5,000 for a hydrogen vehicle, $2,500 for a battery electric vehicle, and $1,500 for a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. As part of the state goals to make these vehicles accessible to folks of all income levels, the state now offers an additional incentive for folks who are of low and moderate income, which is defined as up to 300% of the federal poverty level. And so that incentive is an additional $2,000. So $4,500 for a battery electric vehicle and $3,500 for a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. And additionally, for the portions of Kern County that are within the San Joaquin Valley Air District, there is an additional incentive from the Air District called Drive Clean that adds another $2,000 to $3,000 per vehicles for electric vehicles. So with the combination of these incentives, it can actually be cheaper upfront to purchase or lease an electric vehicle. And then electric vehicles have very low operating costs. So it can be a great financial incentive. People will spend a lot less on gas. And of course, with low to zero emissions, really helps the region make progress on its air quality goals. So how is the San Joaquin Valley doing towards this goal? As I mentioned, we're looking at about 150,000 vehicles to be in the valley by 2025. The current number based on state rebate data for this is the Valley Air District boundaries is about 5,500 vehicles, which you can see kind of on the bottom line there that there's about 5,500 vehicles that have been rebated in the valley. We know not every vehicle gets a rebate, so we normally increase that number by around 20%. So it might be closer to 6,000 electric vehicles on the road in the valley. But as we mentioned, if we want to get to those goals, we expect those numbers will be rapidly increasing. One of the tools we have on our website at cleanvehiclerebate.org is a heat map. So in addition to seeing in graphical form the number of rebates and the amount of funding that have come to the valley, you can actually see where geographically the rebates have gone. You can sort this map by different geographic levels, including county, zip code, census tract, and state legislature district. For whatever reason, we unfortunately don't make it very easy to sort by city. But if you're interested in the number of electric vehicles in your city, you can contact us directly. So this map kind of showing the valley and parts north and south of it, you can see LA and Santa Clara County there in the dark red have the highest number of electric vehicles. Fresno is a little bit darker in color, showing that Fresno has more electric vehicles than Bakersfield. And then these maps, which might be hard to read depending on your vantage point, shows a zip code and census tract level, more focused on the valley. So in the map on the left, you can see that most of those vehicles are located in zip codes immediately adjacent to Bakersfield, as well as the top of the map shows kind of the Fresno area, and it's primarily northeast Fresno that's particularly rich with electric vehicles. And then with the census tract map on the right, zoomed into Kern County, you can see it's really concentrated in southwest Bakersfield right now, but there is some spread of electric vehicles throughout Kern County. Based on our current rebate numbers, there's about 1,000 electric vehicles in Kern County, which includes about 900 in the Valley Air District portion and centered on Bakersfield, but there is about 100 electric vehicles in eastern Kern County as well, again, based on current rebate data. So AB 1236, which I mentioned, was signed by Governor Brown in October 2015, and the bill requires the adoption of an ordinance to streamline and expedite the permitting process for EV charging stations. Some of you might remember a similar bill that passed for solar a few years ago, and your city might have passed an ordinance related to solar permitting. So this law does require your city to pass an ordinance related to electric vehicle permitting. And the larger cities, including the city of Bakersfield, were required to pass this ordinance by September of last year. And I believe the city of Bakersfield did. But now all the other smaller cities are required to kind of pass the ordinance and have a process in place, which includes having a checklist for expedited permit review. That checklist should be published and publicly accessible. And you're also supposed to be accepting permit applications electronically. But for many of the smaller cities, electronically can mean by fax or by email. So you don't need to have a full online permitting program. And through the Valley Takes Charge program, we have resources available for all the jurisdictions, including the jurisdictions in eastern Kern County, to make sure that you have the resources you need to comply with this law. But if you're on the council and you haven't adopted any changes to your building ordinance recently, you might expect to see something related to this coming up soon. So one of the goals of this Valley Takes Charge project is to offer training workshops, both for city staff as well as for installers. And CSE is an International Code Council preferred training provider. So for your staff that's looking for kind of professional education credits, we offer those credits in a 90-minute course. And one of the things we've done is included topics beyond electric vehicle charging. We find most city staff actually don't have any problem with electric vehicle charging. Some cities may have not permitted a high number of electric vehicle chargers, but they're generally well equipped to process those permits. And actually, the only city when the bill was passed that required some attention to be paid, there was maybe an assumption that some cities weren't prepared, and the only city that I've ever seen that had a big problem with electric vehicles was a wealthy coastal Southern California city that had concerns about the aesthetics of charging stations, and that's the only city I've ever seen that denied getting charging stations installed. So it's not really a problem, but we want to make sure that the city staff have all the resources they need, as well as we provide information on other coming energy changes, such as new requirements in CalGreen and requirements for zero net energy that the state is pushing down onto local jurisdictions as well. And in addition to these training workshops for local jurisdictions, as I mentioned, we're doing training workshops for contractors to help contractors ensure they're aware of the requirements for permitting and inspection related to installation, but really trying to get kind of contractors empowered to not just install stations, but help to understand the technology and help to promote the technology in the valley, where we know that getting more electric vehicles and charging stations is essential to meeting our air quality goals. So in addition to this kind of training and education opportunities, there's other opportunities that your jurisdictions can take related to electric vehicles. So the Energy Commission has funded build out of fast charging among highway corridors, including I-5, 99, and the 58. So this is funding that's already been awarded to certain providers. And we can expect to see build out of stations in places like Tehachapi and on the 58 heading all the way out towards Barstow, as well as more installations along the 5 and the 99. There's also the utilities, both PG&E and Southern California Edison have large programs to install workplace charging, some types of fleet charging, charging at multi-unit dwellings, and other types of charging. And so by helping to have your jurisdictions prepared for electric vehicles, you can be more likely to get some of these stations installed in your city. And if your city is interested in getting electric fleet vehicles, of which there's great incentives, the utilities can often help with the infrastructure side. We also encourage you to include EV charging in local plans. I know right now you're working on a station area plan for high-speed rail once it reaches Bakersfield, and that planners here are looking at how charging around downtown Bakersfield can be accommodated in that plan. But we definitely, as you guys work on your 2050 regional transportation plan, would encourage you to look at how charging can be more fully integrated into that plan. We also think that more community events and awareness are going to be needed in the valley to really see the valley reach the number of electric vehicles it needs. And there's great groups like the San Joaquin Clean Cities Coalition and the San Joaquin Valley EV Partnership that have been doing a lot in the valley to promote electric vehicles, but more work is still needed. So if your community is planning a community fair or an event, you can let the Air District know, let us know, or let some of these other groups know. And there's folks that would love to bring out cars, bring out vehicles, and engage with your constituents about the advantages of driving electric. And so that's it for my presentation. We really just a few takeaways. We want to help you, so please let us know if there's other things that we can help you with through the Valley Takes Charge program. You can contact us to schedule trainings for your jurisdictions, and we are in touch with many of your building departments already to schedule these trainings. And we'll have a full schedule of the trainings once they're scheduled on our website at energycenter.org/Valley Takes Charge. And there's also a lot of great information on the rebates, including the maps and statistics I showed you on the Clean Vehicle Rebate Project website at cleanvehiclerebate.org. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions or discussion.
So, who pays for charging stations, and about how much do they cost?
That's a great question. So right now, the charging stations are funded in a variety of ways, including state grants, as well as some automakers are helping to fund the build out of charging infrastructure, and others are just privately funded. Most of the charging stations to use them now have a fee associated, so the actual users are paying for the electricity that they use. For a commercial, what we call a level 2 station, the kind you see in a lot of like kind of office parking lots that take an hour or two to give you a charge. The stations themselves cost, for a commercial station, cost between $2,000 and $5,000 for the station, but the electrical infrastructure can cost more. So one of the things for new construction, it's now required to put in some trenching or some conduit between the building and the parking lot, because that can be more expensive than the units is to actually get power to the parking lot. So that's required in new construction, but we definitely encourage folks, if they're doing capital planning for public facilities and other sorts of renovations, to get some conduit in to your parking lot to make it easier to install electric vehicle charging in the future. The fast charging stations that we see close to the highway, those installations can run between $50,000 and $100,000 each, including, like, there was one that was just recently installed in the Walmart on Panama Lane, and that was a $100,000 plus installation.
Wow. My other question is, you showed rebates for automobiles and motorcycles, and I ride an e-bike every day. E-bikes are not in the list?
No, unfortunately not. And the California Bike Coalition has actually been lobbying the Air Resources Board to include some funding for e-bikes, and we at the Center for Sustainable Energy would love to rebate e-bikes, but it's not currently allowed in the state program.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple questions. First of all, is there a study that has to be done before you construct a station to make sure that the power that you're pulling from those, I mean, does it create a spike in power in areas, or how does that work?
That's a great question. So broadly, in terms of studies, I can tell you that charging station projects are exempt from CEQA. So you don't normally have to do like an environmental impact report if you're going to put in charging stations. In terms of the power study, you do need to do load calculations. So if you have an engineering firm that's helping to design the project, they'll do load calculations kind of on site to make sure you have the power capacity. And if it's a fast charging station or like stations for buses or transit vehicles or other heavy duty vehicles, often the utility will get involved, and PG&E or Southern California Edison will send one of their staff members out to make sure that you're not going to overload the distribution circuit in the area. So there is some work that needs to be done on that local area. But on a wider utility-wide scale, electric vehicles don't pose any risk to the grid, and the utilities are working really hard to make sure that electric vehicles actually help the grid, not hurt the grid, by charging at times when there's excess power and not charging at times when power is harder to get, like on the hottest summer afternoons.
Also, I don't know if this is a question you can ask, maybe Aaron. I know Golden Empire Transit contributed some money to the over by the train station. Is there gonna be some power?
Yeah,
How many are there gonna be? Do you know?
I believe there's going to be 4 charging stations at the Amtrak station. It's a project that's being done with a variety of funds, but yes, Golden Empire Transit did contribute funds to that project. City of Bakersfield is the lead, and I believe there'll be 4 charging stations.
And when is that supposed to get started, and when will it be complete? Do we know?
They've already started. They're doing electrical work right now. There'll be solar panels installed and a significantly expanded parking lot. My guess is they have about 5 or 6 months to go.
Okay. Yeah, that's all I got. Thank you.
More, Aaron, does CMAC fund charging stations? Would that work?
I believe there is a category for alternative fuel, and we have pushed all our member agencies to move towards electric. I believe Shafter is the only city so far that has went to, and yes, they did use for sure in Shafter some CMAC funds for that. Okay.
I was just thinking the city garage. Would that be something that maybe the city could look at with a CMAC?
Yes,
Yeah.
and later today I will talk about the current CMAC call for projects.
Great, thanks.
I'd like to add a quick note on the City of Bakersfield project. One of the things they did was forward thinking, is they've put in the electricity in the ground to eventually be able to install 6 charging stations. They're starting with 4. They'll see what the demand is. That also still leaves them open to apply for Air District incentive money to put in charging stations later
Well,
at the Amtrak station.
will those be? Do you have to pay, or are those free to the public?
I think they're going to be free, but
Really?
They're going to be free
So you
right
could
now.
drive there, leave your car there to charge it, and then walk here to KernCOG
You could.
if Aaron Hakimi wanted to trade in his for a.
you can do that already at the Kern Community College District. They have charging stations in their parking lot, so that's probably even a little bit closer.
Yeah.
But
There
you need
go.
a parking permit to park in that parking lot.
Questions from the public? No, thank you very much.
Cool. Thank you for having me.
Kern Council of Governments, Government's Transportation Planning Policy Committee meeting. Please stand for the flag salute. Salute, pledge. Roll call.
Present.
Smith,
I'm here.
Wood, Pasquale. Here. Locke, Cantu, Mauer,
Here.
Crouch. Yes. Pryor, Bill Smith,
Here.
Wigman.
Here.
Couch.
Here.
Scrivener.
Here.
Miller. Here. Hara,
I'm here.
Kearney.
Item number 3, public comments. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the committee on any matter not on this agenda but under the jurisdiction of the committee. Committee members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the committee at a later meeting. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes with the authority of the chair to extend the time limit as deemed appropriate for conducting the meeting. Please state your name and address for the record prior to making any presentation. Do we have any public comments?
We'll get him through. We'll get him through.
He's gonna hurry.
You're supposed to be-
Lieutenant Ian Silva, Kern County Sheriff's Office, watching the clock very carefully, apparently. We'll speak quickly. I did. I just wanted to give my monthly update about our contract with the KernCOG, with the Sheriff's Office for our inmate crews. As you know, this contract cycle is finishing up. We've only got about 15 more days of this actual contract, so the stats I'm going to give you are pretty much the year. Obviously, we'll add a little bit more, but not much. Over the course of the 2016 cycle, we've been at over 130 job sites, covering 319 miles of cleaning up. We've expended about 1,030 hours of detention deputy time, and then if you add in the inmate time, it goes up to about 6,180 man hours of labor. Again, if you do the calculation as far as the cost saving, we're putting it at about $163,522. We've been pretty much everywhere at this point: Bakersfield, Delano, McFarland, Shafter, just to name a couple of the places we've been at this point during the course of the year. We've been all over the county for the most part. I'm happy to point out that on the 16th, the Board of Supervisors approved our next year's contract, so we'll pick up right where we left off when this contract ends and carry on with the project. One point I did want to mention: on my last update, a question was asked about whether we need to stay within the county, and as I drove away, I realized I may have misunderstood the question. I think the question may have been whether we're able to operate in city limits within the county, and if that was the question, I just want to clarify, we can do that. It takes some coordination for traffic control and whatnot, but we can do that if that's something. I didn't want to deter anybody that thought I was saying if it was in the city limits we couldn't touch it. And generally anywhere, if we're not familiar with the area, we kind of scout it out ahead of time. So if there is an unusual area, we'll go ahead and look and then coordinate. If we can't do it, we can't do it. But we try to stay pretty flexible about where we go and what we do in terms of cleaning up. So unless there's any questions, and I really hope I hit the 2-minute mark, I'll get out of the way.
Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? None? Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
You too. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll move right along. Item number 4, consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by KernCOG staff and will be approved by one motion if no member of the committee or public wishes to comment or ask questions. If comment or discussion is desired by anyone, the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered in the listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the committee concerning the item before the action is taken. We have items A through I.
Motion on consent?
Yes.
Varela,
Yes.
Boxford,
Yes.
Westwell, Mauer,
Yes.
Kraut, Bill Smith,
Yes.
Wigman,
Yes.
Couch,
Yes.
Scrivener,
Aye.
Miller, Para.
Yes.
We are going to switch over to our agenda for Kern Council of Governments, item number 4A, 2017 Community Survey Final Report. Ms. Napier.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. It is my pleasure tonight to introduce Brian Godby. I'm sure a lot of you recognize him because he's been here several times before, presenting the community survey. This year it's for the 2017 Quality of Life Community Survey. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm pleased to be here yet another year to present the data, and we've got an overview for this evening. There's, of course, a huge report which Becky has available should we want to get into that at a later time. To begin with, as always, the purpose of this was to look conduct a survey of residents with the following objectives: to gauge opinion of the current and future quality of life in the resident's city or town, to look at the importance of specific issues related to the quality of life, to understand daily commute behavior, to look at housing preferences, and then of course there's a wealth of demographic information which is the basis for the cross-tabulation and the detailed analysis that's available in the full report. In terms of the survey methodology, this for the second time is now a telephone and online survey. About 3 years ago, we started switching all of our work to multiple mode because we believe that it's important to survey people in the methodology that they prefer. So what that means here is that we surveyed people on their landlines, their cell phones. We sent out emails where we had email addresses available. And we also are now sending out text invitations on people's cell phones, obviously. Some people have those texts available on other devices, and we're getting responses in that fashion now as well. This universe was the adults 18 years or older in the county. We were in the field from the very end of January through February 12th. The average survey on the phone was 22 minutes long. We don't know how long the online variations take because we can't tell if people start or stop. We can only tell when they finish it. We do know that it's successful in offering it in email and text because people take it on their schedule, not our usual calling schedules. So it is all times of the day and the night that they respond to the surveys. In terms of the sample size, the overall was 1,328. One of the advantages of doing an online is that the incremental interviews don't cost us anything. So instead of the 1,200 that we used to limit it to, because every additional phone call cost money, we're able to get additional interviews essentially for free via the email invitation and the text invitation to the online survey. The number of completes within each type, there were 707 landline completed interviews, 314 cell interviews, 254 online via the email invitation, and 53 via the text invitation. Additionally, 84 interviews were conducted in Spanish, and that gives us an overall margin of error of 2.69, 2.7% in round numbers. The first question that we looked at was the overall satisfaction with the quality of life. In this question, we say, are you very satisfied, somewhat dissatisfied, very dissatisfied, or don't know, not sure about the quality of life in your community? To make the analysis easier, we can add the very satisfied and somewhat satisfied together. And you see in 2017, we were at 83.5, 84 in round numbers, saying that they were satisfied with the quality of life in their community. That compares with 85% in 2016. Given the error rates on both surveys, that's virtually the same. In 2015, it was 82. In 2014, it was 84. All of those are virtually identical based on error rate. We skip 13 because we can't get all the data on one slide. There's 13, 11, 9 also available, but we've got 2012 was 81%, so again, virtually the same level, a little bit lower than in 2010, 78, and 2009, 79. So it's higher than when we started doing the survey back in before the recession. In terms of their outlook for the future quality of life, this question asked people if they thought it would be much better, somewhat better, stay about the same, somewhat worse, or much worse. And in 2017, again, adding the top two together, we've got 83% of the people that think that things are going to get better. We've got about 30% in round numbers that say staying the same, and then 17% saying somewhat worse, and only 9 or 10% in round numbers saying that it's going to get much worse. If we compare that down with previous years, in 2016, we were at 41% that were saying better. Again, statistically the same. In 2015, it was 34%. Much better and somewhat better. In 2014, it was 41% in round numbers, and virtually the same as we move down, although it was a little bit lower going into 2010 and 2008. The next question that we asked was an open-ended one, so we just asked, what do you think is the feature that you like most in your community, city or town or area, and then we just listened and took down verbatim responses. So these are not our response categories, these are their responses. The top tier is they like the small town atmosphere at 41%. In a second tier, and that second tier is defined by, again, our margin of error, so we'd have to see about a 5% difference for it to be statistically significant, so 5% less than 41 is where our second tier starts. The second tier is sense of community, cost of living, location, and cost of housing. The interesting thing there is we do a lot of these similar surveys in other communities throughout the state. And what we've seen, at least in the more urbanized areas in Southern California and in Northern California, is that cost of living and cost of housing are not things they like. They are on the list. They are very high. They are things they don't like. So that's a significant difference here. In our third tier, we have the weather and climate, safe neighborhoods and communities, natural resources, and then farming and agricultural communities. Beyond that, we get into single digits, and those with error rates are not that significant. The next question was the same format. It was open-ended, and we said, what's the feature that you like the least about your city or town? And in our top tier, we have two items. We have air quality at 32%, which is notable because we usually don't see that. So that's something that's obviously important to them, and to try to figure out how to address that. The second item in that top tier also is crime rate at 30%, and that varies just compared to other communities based on the community that we're in. Sometimes we see it in the top tier, other times we don't. In our second tier, we have gang violence. Obviously, that's related to crime rate. And then we have job opportunities at 18% of the people saying that they'd like to see more of those. In the third tier, we have lack of community resources, hospitals, et cetera, growth in planning, traffic congestion, public transportation, and housing affordability. Again, as I noted earlier, traffic congestion and housing affordability in most of the more urbanized counties in the Bay Area or in Los Angeles, those are much, much higher. In fact, we just presented results to the council in the city of Cupertino where traffic congestion was identified by 56% of the people as the #1 problem in the community. So now, I also kid that the closer you are to Apple and Facebook, the worse that gets. Obviously, Cupertino is ground zero for Apple Computer. So that may explain why it's so high there. But yours is dramatically, dramatically lower than that. And that's probably a good thing, even though it is on this list of things they don't like. The next question, or really the set of questions, was 20 different items that we asked how important they were in improving the future quality of life. We grouped those into a variety of different categories, and you'll see the categories in a moment. But when we get rid of the categories and just look at the items themselves, the top 7 items in terms of the most importance to improving the future quality of life were preserving the water supply. Our scale was a 0 to 4, and that was a 3.67, so that was almost at the top. Improving the quality of public education was second at 3.6. Improving crime prevention and gang prevention programs was at 3.55. Improving air quality, again, at 3.46. Creating more high-paying jobs at 3.45. Improving water quality at 3.43. And then maintaining local streets and roads. So you see some commonalities with the concerns and the things that they think are the most important issue to address in the future open-end in this list as well, as we saw in the previous ones. Now, the next several charts are the same data. They're just broken down by the different categories that we looked at. We didn't talk to the respondents about the categories, but these are categories that we've grouped them in consistently over the years. The first one being economic vitality. We've got 2 items in there: creating more high-paying jobs, which was at a 3.45, so that's almost right between the extremely and very important rating on our scale, and that's the most important item in the economic vitality section. Encouraging new businesses to relocate was a little bit lower, but not as high as the more high-paying jobs. That was clearly the standout there. In terms of the community assets and infrastructure, the most important item here was revitalizing older neighborhoods and business districts at 3.17. That's a little bit higher than it was in the last 2 years, but again, statistically, it's virtually the same. And then creating more affordable housing was a little bit lower than it was in the previous year, but virtually the same statistically. So that's still of importance as well. The next 2 slides deal with the transportation choices, and again highlighting the item that is the highest of all of the concerns here. It was maintaining local streets and roads. That's the 3rd one down at 3.41. Again, that's almost right between the extremely important and very important categories. We also had expanding highways was actually a little bit lower than it was in 2016 at 2.79. Reducing traffic congestion was also a little bit lower. That's certainly the right direction, at least that you'd like to see. And then finally, expanding local bus services was a little bit lower in terms of importance than it was last year. The next slide shows the remainder of the transportation choices. Improving public transportation to other cities was slightly less important. Again, statistically, there's really no difference. Improving sidewalks and bike lanes was actually a little bit more important. It's hard to say it's statistically significant, but it's certainly going up. And then finally, providing public transportation, carpooling, et cetera, was slightly less important than it was in the previous years. Moving on to the next category, which was conserving undeveloped land and natural resources. The number 1 item on this list was preserving water supply. Again, I mentioned that earlier. That's the top item on the entire list. But it's also the top item here for natural resources at 3.67, virtually the same as it was in 2016. We also have improving air quality at 3.46 and improving water quality at 3.43. So all 3 of those, air quality, water supply, and water quality, are really right in the middle between extremely and very important. And then preserving open spaces and native animal habitats at 3.03. That's right at the very important level. The next category was development related and use of efficient development where appropriate, and we asked them if they thought developing a variety of housing options was important for the future quality of life. That came in at 2.57, so right between very important and somewhat important, so obviously it's a little bit lower down the list. And that was a little lower than it was in 2016 as well. And then the final category was services, safety, and equity, so it's a little bit of a catch-all. The number 1 item on this list was improving the quality of public education, and as we saw in the overall list, that was in the top of that category as well at 3.6. It's identical to where it was in 2016, no change there. We also have improving fire and emergency medical services at 3.3. That's a little higher than it was in 2016. Improving local health care and social services at 3.32, also a little bit higher than last year. Improving crime prevention and gang prevention programs at 3.55, so that's really right in the middle between extremely and very important. And virtually the same as it was the previous year. And then improving local libraries, still important, but a little bit below the very important level. So the next question dealt with the primary mode choice for transportation to and from work and school. And not surprising, driving alone is still the top choice. It's at 74.4%, 74 in round numbers. It's actually down a little bit from 2016. It's down 3.7%, statistically speaking, that's not a significant change, but it certainly is an interesting and notable change. And the data is more similar to where we were in 2015. I don't know if there was a reason for a blip in 2016, but that's what appears to have happened. Don't work outside the home was about 7%, pretty much the same as before, a little bit different. Carpooling at 6.4, public transit at 4.5, walking at 2.2. Moving to the next slide, biking at 0.4. Uber and Lyft, which was added this year, or added last year, but there's not really much of a use there at 0.3. Taxi was out first on the list, their first time on the list this year was at 0.1, and then other at 1.5. The secondary mode choice for transportation to or from work and school was carpooling at 23.9, 24 in round numbers. That's up 1.5 from before. Now that may be the difference between where we were with the drivers who went down, and people are now carpooling a little bit more. Again, though, it's within the error rate, so it's difficult to say if that's exactly what's going on. Public transit, bus or shuttle was our next category at 11%, walking at 9%, biking at 5%, Uber, Lyft at 4.4, drive alone, car, truck, motorcycle, or scooter at 4.0, and again, don't work outside the home at a small number as well. The next question asked people who did drive what they thought of the traffic flow in their city or town. And again, adding the excellent and good together, we have 56% that said it is excellent or good. That's a 5.3% increase from 2016 and is just at the edge of being statistically significant. So that is a notable jump. It was 51% in 2016 and 51 in 2015 as well. So that is an increase and good news. The next two slides show the commute time, and what you see here, if you do the math, is that the 20 minutes or less is about 43% of the population. 21% are 10 minutes or less. That's up 5% from before, so shorter commutes are good. 11 to 20 minutes is at 22%. That's down slightly from the year before. And then 21 to 40 minutes is at 29%, and that's just up slightly. When we look at the more onerous commutes, we have 41 to 60 minutes. That's 15% in round numbers. It's down just a little bit from the previous year. And more than 60 minutes is up just a little bit at 10% in round numbers from the year before. The next question converted the minutes to miles, or asked them what their mileage was. If you look at and do the math on this first page, you'll see that 61% said that it's between 0 and 20 miles. That breaks down to 22% for 5 miles or less, up a little bit from the previous year. 16% for 6 to 10 miles. That's virtually the same, but slightly less than the previous year, and 24%, which is slightly less for those that drive 11 to 20 miles. Again, the more onerous commutes, 21 to 40 miles at 19% in round numbers, and more than 40 miles at 13%. Of those people that indicated they drive alone from our first mode choice question, we then asked them, what would be your alternative if it were available in your area? And the largest group said carpool or vanpool at 17.5%, which is actually down 12% from the year before, so that's sort of going the wrong direction. Traditional bus service was at 14, express bus service at 11, bicycle at 8, walk at 6, Uber, Lyft at 5, and then none of the above. Those are the people that are basically saying, we're never, ever going to change. That's 33%, and that's up 5%, so that's a significant increase from 2016 as well. Next question was new to this survey, and it was a simple one. Have you ever used a freeway or highway call box in the last 12 months? An overwhelming majority, 93% in round numbers, said no, they have not. Only 0.5% didn't know, which leaves about 7% that said yes, they had. Switching gears to the housing section, the first question was, what kind of house do you have, or home do you have? 39% said single-family home with small yard. 47% in round numbers said single-family home with a large yard. We're leaving it to them to define large and small yard. Townhouse or condominium was at 3%, and a building with offices, mixed use, and condos on the upper floor at 0.1, so very, very small. An apartment at 10%, and the rest didn't know. The next question was, what would you prefer if you were moving? And of those people that picked single-family home with small yard in 2017, that was 77%. That was up from 2015, where it was 63, and really it is back to the same level it was in 2012, where it was 78%. The people choosing a single-family home with a large yard, and these categories can overlap, so that's why they don't add up to 100%. In 2017, that's 83%. So the vast majority of the population are still choosing that single-family home with a big yard, is what it comes down to. That's up from 2015, but it's more in keeping with 2014, 13, 12, and 9, as you can see. Looking at the rest of the categories, preferring a townhome or condominium, only 43% said that they would definitely or probably choose that, so much smaller than the single-family home. A mixed-use condo at 21 and an apartment at 31, so those are much below the single-family homes. When we look at what people have now, and that's the across the top, with what they would choose, people who have a single-family home with a small yard, the vast majority of them would continue in that configuration. It's at 86. Those that would switch to a large yard were 75, so you can see that they're pretty happy with what they've got. Same thing is true for the single family with a large yard. The largest majority, 86%, pick the same configuration. When we looked at the people that currently have a townhome or a condominium, their choice would be, if they had one, to go to a single-family large yard at 77%, a little bit higher than the small yard. Skipping over the mixed-use development because it's virtually zero. Those people that have an apartment, their choice really was a single-family home with a small yard, but a large yard followed closely behind, although it is statistically different. And then continuing with an apartment would be their third choice, but all in the 80s. So that concludes the presentation. What's left in it is really a written version of what I've just gone through. So I'm not going to repeat it unless you have any questions. We can go back to those specific slides, but it's there for you to read at your leisure.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Smith?
I just have a couple your first couple slides, generally happy with your community, generally unhappy with your community. Are those numbers consistent in other surveys you do, or are we generally happier or generally unhappier than other communities?
I think this is a good place to be. Let me get all the way back to that. There we go. Quality of life in the mid to low 80s is a good place to be. A great place to be is in the 90s. We do have some clients that are in the 90s. They tend to be more affluent communities in the west part of the San Francisco Bay Area. And I think that's probably the driver because people can afford those communities. But this is a good thing at this stage. Where we think it's not good is when they get into the low 70s and in 60s, and we've seen some areas, particularly in the greater Los Angeles area, that do fall into those categories. So, good. Could be better, but pretty good.
Ms. Para?
I have I guess a comment and kind of a question on the importance of specific issues in the next 20 years. I just think it's telling, I guess, that on the top 4 is the improving air quality, but the bottom 4 is the way to improve air quality is the developing a variety of housing options, providing public transportation, expanding local bus service. So either we're not educating people enough that these are the ways to reduce the air quality, or I tend to think people know, they just don't care. So I just think it's funny that that's when your top is the air quality, but yet the things you want to do to improve it is way down at the bottom.
It is certainly inconsistent in terms of the responses. It is consistent with other communities. The 74% that want to drive alone is not unusual at all. In fact, again, in that Cupertino example, it was 80%.
But
so that's not unusual. It doesn't fix the problem. That's the number one problem. It's a matter of linking those two together. That's
But
right.
their reason mainly is because traffic congestion, which we don't have here, and ours is air quality. And I guess it's the same things that solve that is the same things here.
Right,
So
yeah,
I just think
yeah.
it's
The solution is not yet generated enough interest for people to adopt it. We didn't get into it here, but we've done a lot of transportation studies over the years, and what we continue to see when we do that, and we just finished a couple of them, is that the reason that people don't adopt public transit is because the schedules aren't convenient, or it's not convenient to my place of work or my house, and that's a very narrow window. The convenience, the schedules are obviously the schedules, but the convenience in terms of distance is about 5 minutes walk from my house or from my work, so they're not really willing to be very flexible at this stage. But again, I think the dissonance between air quality and drive alone behavior is something that you could try to make a point and educate people about.
and the last one is one of your slides showed that people would rather walk somewhere than bike somewhere. Why the heck would anybody want to walk somewhere rather than bike?
That's a good question. I'm a cyclist, so I'm the wrong person to ask that question of. I think there's just limitations in people's ability to bike, strangely enough. We've done a couple bike surveys, mostly in the Bay Area, associated with bike pods and those sorts of things. And it does seem to be a comfort with biking, not just, getting on a bike and riding just because you did it once when you were 12.
Thank you.
Any comments from the public?
I wanted to ask a question.
Oh,
The respondents you got, how were they spread around the county?
One of the things that we do is we look at the geographic area. We break the survey down into 4 areas. We have the greater Bakersfield area, which is the biggest portion of the sample, and then we have the mountains, and then we have West Kern and East Kern, and each of those get 200 responses each. So we've got 600, 200, 200, and 200. Obviously, we got more than that, but that's the goal. And then we make sure that we weight it into the appropriate distribution for those regions. It's also weighted by age, gender, and ethnicity as well. So we make sure that it's reflective of the population of Kern County, both in terms of demographics and geographics.
Thank you.
any more questions from the board? Any comments from the public? Yes?
I have a question on somewhat somewhat tangentially. I'm Dennis Vaughn. Air quality. Shipping stuff. Is it cheaper to ship by truck through this area than it is by rail?
I'll defer to
Okay, and yeah, okay. But I was wondering also, the people, they're wondering about,
Speak into the mic, please.
We're not picking you up.
oh, okay, how about the, something that I've noticed, and that is coordination of traffic lights. Did you get into that?
I don't think that was part of the survey, was it?
Yeah, was
No.
that, and do you get into that?
We have dealt with that issue in less in resident satisfaction and more in transportation revenue measures, because it's one of the things that if you do a half-cent sales tax, many counties have said we're going to fix the signalization, but we don't have that in this survey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, if you'd like to finish this item, you just need to have a motion to accept the community survey, and then you won't have to come back to it later.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? There
Thank
go,
you.
Lori. Thank you very much.
Have a good trip.
So we're back to the Transportation Planning Policy Committee. Item 5, Active Transportation Plan ATP update. Mr. Smith.
Yes, Kern Council of Governments has been working on an active transportation plan for almost a year. I'd like to introduce Mr. Rodrigo Garcia, who is the consultant out of Los Angeles. He's a senior planner with Alta Planning and Design. He has a short presentation about the progress of the active transportation plan, and I'll leave it to Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, members of the board. As Pete said, I'm going to give you a brief update on the active transportation plan. This is a document that will guide and support the efforts to promote active transportation in Kern County. So that being said, why are we planning for walking and bicycling? Well, basically, we're planning for this because we would like to improve safety and comfort in the county of those who are already biking and walking. We would like to enhance links to transit and other community destinations like hospitals, parks, community centers, schools. And also because we would like to provide healthy and affordable transportation alternatives. The Kern Region Active Transportation Plan goals are improve network connectivity, improve accessibility and safety, boost connectivity and economic development, improve health, lay the foundation to an equitable transportation system, provide education, encouragement, enforcement, and evaluation programs, implement policies related to active transportation, and have a plan for the implementation of these projects and programs. I would like to remark that we are planning for all ages and abilities. When we talk about pedestrians or when pedestrian planning, we are talking about also people with disabilities, people on wheelchairs. Again, when we all ages, when we talk about all ages and abilities, we are talking about not only group riders but commuters and kids who would like to get to school biking by bicycle and safe route to school, basically. And of course, we would like to enhance connectivity to transit, make connections for people who bike and walk to get to the bus stop or the transit station. I'm sure you are already familiar with the communities included in the active transportation plan. These are the communities. These are communities that in general represent the county in geographic and demographic wise. The schedule of this project, we kicked off the project last fall. During the winter, we conducted our first round of outreach in the county. In the spring, we released the first draft of recommendations. Now we are finalizing the second round of outreach in the county, and we are releasing also the public draft for public commentation. And in the next couple of months, we will finalize in this active transportation plan, and in September we are aiming to have these final presentations. What does the active transportation include? This active transportation plan includes existing conditions and needs assessment, a chapter of recommended projects and programs, a summary of the outreach, the 2 rounds of community outreach, and an implementation plan. The current conditions includes an analysis of land use, existing bikeways and walkways, bicycle and pedestrian programs, transit and active transportation interface, current walking and bicycling activity levels, demand analysis, a collision analysis, a list of past expenditures, and an analysis of policy and background review documents. Also, last fall, the project team spent a week in Kern County. The project team went from Delano to Fraser Park and from Taft to Ridgecrest to see the existing conditions on the field, and we witnessed the good infrastructure that exists in the communities, like these examples in Arvin and Wasco, these other pedestrian examples in Delano, cycling infrastructure in Bakersfield or Shafter, but we also witness the lack of infrastructure in other communities, and why are we need to implement this plan, right? The outreach summary will include a summary of the walk audits that were conducted during the last winter. Also, a summary of the community workshops that we did, that we are finalizing now, and we did in December. And we are also including a summary of the survey. The project team developed a project survey. We got a good amount of responses, around 400, so it was a good amount compared to other plans I have worked before. And also we are having a draft recommendations. These recommendations are community-wide, are also corridor specific, or maybe spot improvements. There is some places that are already good to walk, and they can be improved with just 1 or 2 little tweaks. And also we are including end-of-trip facilities, which is just basically bike parking, long-term and short-term bicycle parking. We're also including programs, operations and maintenance guidelines, and a list of potential funding sources. This is just an example of the toolkit that we're including in the active transportation plan. Curbside, sidewalks, mid-block crossings, sorry. And after the existing conditions and needs analysis and all the community outreach we did, this is an example of how a pedestrian recommended network looks like. This is for Wasco, but every community has its own. In terms of bicycle recommendations, we are providing bicycle recommendations in accordance to the Caltrans guidelines. Class 1 multi-use paths, Class 2 bike lanes, Class 3 bike routes, Class 4 cycle tracks or separated bike lanes, bikeways. And again, this is how it looks after the existing conditions, needs analysis, and all the community outreach we did. This is the Delano proposed network. When we talk about end-of-trip facilities, we are recommending locations where to place bike lockers or long-term bicycle parking, or just standard bicycle racks. Guidelines for operations and maintenance, pothole filling, bike lane painting, and street sweeping, for example. We are recommending also education, encouragement, enforcement, and evaluation programs. And we are also including a prioritization. As you all know, funding is limited, so we need to set priorities. So in coordination with the project steering committee, we develop a criteria. The criterions included in that criteria are disadvantaged communities in accordance to Cali Enviro Screen, connectivity to transit, connectivity to school, proximity to activity centers or community destinations, community identified improvements, and safety in terms of collisions or in terms of the roadway where we are recommending that improvement. I would like to mention that these priorities, of course, are not set in stone. They may change over time due to policy changes or city staff or county staff changes that come with new ideas. New development may happen during the time, so we need to be opportunistic with our projects, just like high-speed rail, for example. New funding sources may arise, so that's why we recommend this to be treated as a living document that should be regularly revisited. Just the next steps, as I mentioned, July and August we're finalizing this active transportation plan, and the final presentations will be in September. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions from the board? No? Any questions from the public? I guess you did a good job. You have a question?
Hello, my name is Jason Alvarez. The ATP is a great first step for us to provide feedback. As the outreach continues, I recommend having an outreach booth for people in the Hosking Avenue swap meets so they can give their opinion on the needs for their updates in their communities. For example, in Pala Elementary School, flashing beacons are needed on Monitors Street to reduce accidents for pedestrians and lower the speed limit to 25 and now being 45, and have a safe crosswalk for pedestrians. I hope my comments are taken into account. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Patricia, and I am with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. I want to start by thanking the KernCOG staff for having the different outreach places, like at the Lamont Clínica Sierra Vista. I thought that was a great place to gain the comments from community members. And before I make any other comments, I just want to ask, how long will the public comment period be for this to provide feedback?
6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks. And then also, I definitely agree with Jason, the youth. I know at the Lamont Clínica Sierra Vista, one of the community members did mention, go to the Hoskins swap meets or different swap meets throughout Kern. A lot of folks do go to those places, and it's a good way to provide information and gain feedback. Since it is a regional active transportation plan, it's definitely needed to get that feedback. And also, as you continue to do the community outreach, how are the comments or recommendations from the community members going to be included?
So basically, we are finalizing this. Well, we just finished the second round of outreach. So right now, any type of comment, we are getting it from the website where the active transportation public draft will be posted. I think it's already now in the website.
Mm-hmm.
And if you would like to send me the comments, if I understand that access to internet is an issue. So if you know people that would like to comment, and you can just send me I think you have my card, so you can send me the comments directly, or I encourage you to do that for sure.
And just to clarify, I know the outreach for public comment was 1 week, correct? Was it 1 week for this second time around?
Yeah.
For the
Correct.
For the
It's 6 days. Yeah.
6 days, and there's no plan to expand it. It was only 6 days.
No, we did the first round.
Yeah.
And we were scoped for doing another round, which we just finished.
Which was the final public draft, right?
Yeah, exactly.
To go over that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
correct.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to say?
I have one, sure.
Cindy?
How will we treat highways like Bear Mountain Boulevard in Arvin? Is that because it belongs to Caltrans? Is that a whole separate? Will it be included in this, or?
We are including, and actually one of the, if you have the chance to look at the plan, one of the columns of the prioritization list is jurisdiction. We are including that just to make things more clear for for cities or county or who is in charge of that road. Yeah.
Okay. No further comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 6, 2017 Federal Transportation Improvement Program Draft Amendment. Number 6, Ms. Pacheco.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. An amendment has been processed that includes revisions to the State Highway Operations and Protection Program, the Safety Program, and the Transit Program. The public review period began on June the 2nd and ends June 16th. The Federal Transit Administration Section 5311 Program of Projects has been revised with corrections to the operating assistance funding for the cities of California City, Ridgecrest, Taft, and Tehachapi, and that will become part of the summary of comments for this amendment. The KernCOG Executive Director will consider approval of the amendment on June 19th. State and federal approval is required. At this time, I ask the chair to please open the public hearing, allow for public comment, and then close the public hearing.
Okay, I will open the public hearing. Do we have any public comments? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Is that it? Wow, okay. Item number 7, boards, members, meeting reports. Caltrans report.
Good evening. First project on my list is Cherry Avenue truck climbing lanes. That is widening shoulders on Highway 119 near Taft from Elk Hills Road to Tubin Road, and constructing truck climbing lanes. Currently, Fish and Game has requested that we have what they call a vegetation restoration plan in place before they'll allow work on the south side, drainage work on the south side on this project. So we are going to provide a minor B project, a separate project for that plan. And that is we're starting to design that. It's going to take us another year. So we have pulled that portion out so that we can go ahead, accept the contractor's work. He does still have some punch list items, but we're going to accept the project without the south side drainage and come back and do that at a later time. The Shafter Wasco ADA ramp, that's to construct ADA curb ramps on State Route 53 in Shafter and Wasco. It's a shop project for Caltrans. Contractor is reconstructing the ramps and working on the drainage system. This project should be completed by the end of August. The Kern Avenue pedestrian overcrossing, also an ADA compliance upgrade on 99 at Kern Avenue, pedestrian at the overcrossing, self-explanatory. Contractor is working on false work. Project should be completed March of next year. The Delano Roundabout at State Route 155 and Browning Road, a shop project for Caltrans. Construction should begin next month. I don't have an exact date. Currently, AT&T, Southern Edison, and the City of Delano are relocating utilities. Famoso 46 and 99 Bridge. The utility relocation work is currently ongoing. The project was awarded to SEMA Construction. I'm not sure when that project will start. Hopefully I'll have more information next month. The Kern County seismic restoration, that's the 99 in Airport Drive overcrossing and the 99 in Golden State Avenue separation. It's a shop project. We're at 80% complete. We anticipate the contractor being done by the end of this month and moving into plant establishment for a period of 1 year. I would think that 80% is probably more like 90% by now if we're going to be done in the next couple weeks. 99 at Taft Highway, it's a rehab project, pavement rehabilitation on 99 near the city of Bakersfield from north of Herring Road overcrossing to Potato Road undercrossing, another shop project for Caltrans. The project should be on this month's CTC agenda, and we expect to advertise around mid-July, and the CTC is the 29th, isn't it, Aaron?
28th and 29th.
29th, yeah, 28th and 29th, so in another couple weeks. Another one that's also on that agenda for a vote of funds is State Route 46, Conventional Highway, Segment 4A. Widen 46 from 2 to 4 lanes between Lost Hills Road and I-5. And so that's an exciting project. And we anticipate that once we get the vote of funds, we can advertise in early August. So I'll look forward to reporting on that when it starts construction. It's badly needed. And that concludes my report. I'll take questions or concerns, complaints.
Thank you, Gail.
Thanks.
Executive Director's Report.
Good evening, Madam Chair. I just have a handful of items and board members. Next Tuesday, June 20th, Federal Highway Administration will be visiting KernCOG with some of their new employees. Wednesday, June 21st, please pass this on to your staff. Most of them already know it. We will be having a RTIP workshop, and there are 2 other workshops scheduled over the summer and fall. Gail mentioned the next CTC meeting. It's June 28th and 29th. We will have staff there. It's a very important meeting for Kern and KernCOG. Gail mentioned the 46 project. There'll be several other projects for the region on the agenda. And it's obviously the last meeting in this state fiscal year. And a reminder for all your staffs and for all of you that we are in the midst of an active CMAQ and RSTP call for projects, which I've announced before. All the applications require a local resolution to be submitted with them. So if you're not seeing in the next few months resolutions saying that you are committed to project X, Y, and Z, your project won't be able to compete. Okay, yesterday was the groundbreaking ceremony for the Centennial Corridor. Several of you were there. It is a huge step, and it's taken a long, long time to get there. Congratulations to all parties that were involved. And finally, 2 more items. Next month will be an unmet transit needs public hearing. And I want to give kudos to a couple of agencies who aren't here tonight, but BARC, Bakersfield Association for Retarded Citizens, and North of the River Recreation and Park Districts, both are involved with transportation, and were both very successful in capturing some funds recently with the help of Caltrans and KernCOG and others. So congratulations to them. That's all I have on this agenda, Madam Chairman, subject to your questions.
Any questions for the executive director? Any questions from the public? Thank you. We will go to the Kern Council of Governments agenda, and roll call remains the same. So we will go to consent.
Just
Consent agenda, opportunity for public comment. All items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by KernCOG staff and will be approved by one motion if no member of the council or public wishes to comment or ask any questions. We have A, B, C, and D. Do I have a motion?
Motion on consent.
Second.
Second.
Lori?
Corolla,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pasquale,
Yes.
Mauer,
Yes.
Trout, Bill Smith,
Yes.
Wigman.
Yes. All right. Going to the executive director's report.
Good evening again, Madam Chair. Just a few quick items. June 17th is Tune In and Tune Up at the Kern County Fairgrounds. June 22nd is a Regional Transportation Plan Workshop in Wofford Heights. June 23rd, San Joaquin Valley Regional Policy Council meeting in Modesto. June 24th, Downtown Taft Truck, Car, and Bike Show. We will have a booth there. June 30th is the San Joaquin Valley Electric Vehicle Partnership meeting in Fresno. July 3rd is McFarland Independence Day Festival. We will have a booth there. July 19th, a CNG Fleet Workshop at the Kern County Superintendent of Schools facilities. Remember, we will be dark in August. We will be meeting in July. Robert Phipps and I went to Washington, D.C. Right after the last meeting, and I testified before a Senate subcommittee. Very, very interesting and valuable experience, and I'd be glad to talk to any of you about that. In your folder this evening is a summary of all the outreach that has been done for ATP program. Several people have from the public, and we had a presentation on that. A flyer about the organization that gave the workshop presentation, a copy of the workshop presentation, the Valley Take Charge presentation, a article from the Los Angeles Times. Oh, this might be of interest to all of you. There's a new company that has introduced free carpooling software. So if you just go on your phone and do a search for Waze Carpool, you can get matched with someone to carpool with completely for free. Get matched. You do have to pay the person who you're carpooling with a small fee. A letter from the United States Senate. Copy of an article or 3 articles that were in the Bakersfield Californian. The monthly trip status report. A copy of Brian's presentation, and if you want more details about the community survey, we'll be glad to get you that. Our outreach efforts, timeline for the next 4 months, some electric vehicle charging station information, a schedule of cash disbursements, and with that, I'd like to wish all the fathers here a happy Father's Day. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
We have, do we have any member statements before we go any further? Anybody? We have a presentation for Becky Napier. You mean they kept it a secret?
It was in January.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a certificate of appreciation for Becky Napier, Regional Planner, for 10 years of dedicated service to the Kern Council of Governments. from January '07 to January 2017. And you have a little present. Yes. Thank you so much. So I guess this meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Good job.